One of the things we often talk about, especially when you're on a motorcycle, is being invisible to other drivers. And so there are some general tips and tricks that I like to do when riding to try to make sure that either the other driver sees you, or if they don't, that you're in a position to either make a quick escape, have an escape route, or when they do look, that you're in a position to be seen. So it often results in situations like this. If you're in their blind spot, for example, or if they're coming at you making a left-hand turn in front of you. Those are really two of the most common accident-causing scenarios with motorcycles when you're dealing with other vehicles. For example, if you're in a lane of travel and there are two lanes headed in the same direction, you have a choice. You can position yourself in the very center of that lane, which we never suggest because that is where the oil strip is. So it can be slick. It can add that slickness to your tires, or if it begins to rain, any precipitation, what happens is the oils will bubble up to the top, and then that area really is the most slick of all three options on the lane. You can also position yourself in the rightmost part of that lane or in the leftmost part of the lane. So really every lane of travel can be divided for a motorcycle up into three specific sections. New York State, lane splitting, meaning having two guys riding side by side in a lane, is not allowed. So some states it is. Now, lane splitting, if it was allowed, would add a measure of safety because a car that is looking would see actually more material, more mass in that lane. So somebody coming at you would see two headlights coming at the same distance, same space, and same height. So because it's not, when riding in groups, we will often stagger. So somebody will be up in the leftmost part of the lane, the behind bike will be in the rightmost part, and then keep staggering, so somebody seeing you from a distance won't just see one line that can be behind each other, but they will actually see staggered motorcycles side by side almost. Although they are not side by side, they have positions where they are front and back, so they stay in compliance with the vehicle and traffic law, but still provide that greater visibility for when you're traveling in a group. The other thing about lane positioning that's important is if you are in a car or truck's blind spot. Oftentimes, if you can't see the driver, even if they check over their shoulder, they might not be able to see you. This is true with trucks especially. So make sure that if you are driving or riding next to a car, oftentimes I'll position myself to the outermost section of that lane and make sure that if that car does attempt to merge or shift lanes from the right to the left or left to the right, that you've given yourself the most space possible. So if you're on the inside lane and there's a car to your left, the best way to be either visible or have more room for a safe departure is if you stay in the rightmost portion of that lane. That way, if that car does begin to maneuver, you've got that extra distance of the 2/3 of a lane where they might encroach, slow down and back up, hit your horn, and just try to make sure that you've got enough room to let them get in there, even if they don't see you. So that's some lane positioning recommendations for both head-on things and also if people are ahead of you, up and ahead a little bit regarding lane positioning. When you are behind a car, it's important that you are in a position where if they were to check the rearview mirror, they'd be able to see you. So the most dangerous position to be in if you are traveling right behind a car is if you're going to be behind them and then in that leftmost spot, because that's often going to be one of the blind areas if they don't see that section of their car. So another way to just kind of keep visible. The other thing about increasing visibility while you're riding is clothing. Black leather is by far the most common. Some of my leather coats and jackets actually have the reflective stripe on it. Another one actually has on the back a logo and a skull that when you look at it, it doesn't shine. But at night when you shine lights on it, it's all luminescent. So really when you're shopping for gear, it might not look the best, but find something that does have some reflective material on it. And they do make clothing that has reflective material that doesn't look reflective until a light is shined on it. There are stickers and things that guys put on their helmets. You could put things that look good but also have a reflective nature on it. Additional lighting, I've added additional lighting that runs from the front to the back of the bike that are LEDs that light up at night, and it really gives much more of a footprint and a visual footprint and a presence when you see it coming down the road. So there are really do-it-yourself, inexpensive ways of adding reflective material, lighting. There are DIY kits you can buy at the auto parts store, and they're not very complex. They really have a really low draw, so they're not going to pull a ton of battery life away. And while your bike is running and charging appropriately, you won't notice any difference at all because the LEDs really don't draw much juice at all. So those are just a couple ways to kind of to keep out there. You can actually add additional lights now. Online there are a lot of different choices. We added a a reflecting dimmer and a switch that actually, when I hit the brakes, will activate a strobe-like effect in different patterns, so people coming from behind will see you. It's amazing how many times I hear regarding motorcycle accidents that the car behind just didn't see the bike in front. It makes no sense, but it's not what they're used to. So oftentimes it won't trigger that same mental image in their brain. So having a strobing light for the brakes and for the turn signals is a great way to do it. It adds a little bit of an expense, but well worth the cost. You know, if you have any friends of yours that have it, you'll see like it is dramatically different side by side when two bikes come to a stop, one that has that strobing light effect. So another suggestion on modifying your bike to increase visibility, we have seen bikes that have the same strobing effect on their front headlight. The legality of that is questionable because you're not supposed to have strobing front lights, especially being the headlight. In my opinion, I think I'd rather take the ticket and have that extra visibility than kind of worry about getting pulled over for it. If you do, obviously, have your license, your registration handy right away, have your inspection up to date. And I think that if you explain to the officer why you have it, because it doesn't increase or change any aesthetics. It doesn't look, people aren't doing it for the looks. It doesn't look cool. You might have a sympathetic officer who understands that you're not really doing anything to distract the other drivers too much, but you are trying to protect you and your family in case something happens or drivers don't see you, because that famous left turn in front of the motorcycle is probably the #1 cause of two vehicle crashes with a bike. So hope those tips helped. As I think of more, we'll add more to it.